The eternal horizon shuddered as 7 Draknor warships concentrated their fire on her. Energy beams carved through her shields and explosions rippled across her hull. Alarms screamed throughout the ship. In engineering, Chief Engineer Sung Min held onto his console as the deck tilted beneath him. Shields down to 40%. He shouted into his communicator. Hull breaches on decks 7 and 9. Captain Daeho gripped his command chair as another blast struck the carrier. Sparks flew from damaged consoles and the lights flickered, but he remained calm, his mind racing through options. This was the moment he had prepared for, the reason every system on his ship had multiple backups. Route power from non-essential systems to the shields, Daeho ordered. Damage control teams to the breach points. Hana status on the escort vessels? Commander Hana checked her tactical display. The Defiance has taken heavy damage but is still operational. The Resolute is moving to provide covering fire. Good. Tell them to focus on the Draknor cruisers. We'll handle the battle cruiser. Daeho leaned forward. Communications Officer Jin Ho. Send a message to all remaining coalition ships. Tell them to rally on our position. It's time to remind the Draknor what happens when you underestimate your enemy. Jin Ho, a young man with steady hands despite the chaos, transmitted the message. Within moments, the 2 damaged coalition cruisers began moving toward the eternal horizon, their remaining weapons firing at the Draknor fleet. The Draknor commander watched this development with growing frustration. They should be dead. That carrier should be debris. How is it still fighting? His tactical officer studied their scans. Commander, their ship is built differently than any vessel we've encountered. They have physical armor plating over 3 meters thick in some sections. Their internal systems are compartmentalized with mechanical bulkheads. Even when we destroy their electronic systems, they switch to manual controls. Then we will simply hit them harder. The commander pointed at the main display. All ships prepare to fire the plasma torpedoes. 4 ships will target the carrier. The other 3 will destroy the planet's evacuation transports. If we cannot break their will, we will eliminate what they came to protect. But Daeho had anticipated this move. He had been watching the Draknor formation, noting how they positioned themselves, learning their patterns. Hana, they're going to split their fire. 3 ships are moving toward the transports. I see it, Captain. Should we intercept? No, we're going to do something they won't expect. Daeho turned to the helm. Plot a collision course with the battle cruiser. Full speed. The bridge fell silent. Lieutenant Yuna looked up from her console, her eyes wide. Captain, did you say collision course? You heard me correctly. The Draknor think our armor is a weakness, a sign of primitive design. Let's show them why we built this ship to take hits. Daeho's voice was steel. All fighters, clear the area around the battle cruiser. We're coming through. In his fighter, pilot Jaewon received the order and couldn't believe what he was hearing. The captain wants to ram them? That's insane. But then he grinned. That's also brilliant. All squadrons pull back from the battle cruiser. Give the horizon room to work. The fighters scattered and the eternal horizon accelerated. Her chemical thrusters burned at maximum output, pushing the massive carrier forward at speeds that seemed impossible for something so large. The Draknor battlecruiser tried to turn away, but it was too slow, too committed to its attack run. Brace for impact, Daeho shouted. The 2 ships collided with tremendous force, but the eternal horizon didn't crumple. Her heavy armor, the very feature the aliens had mocked, absorbed the impact. The carrier's reinforced prow smashed into the battlecruiser's side, crumpling the enemy's hull like paper. Metal screamed. Bulkheads collapsed. The battlecruiser's main reactor went critical, and a massive explosion tore through its center. On the eternal horizon, the crew felt the impact like a massive hammer blow. Sungmin and his engineering teams held onto their stations as the ship shook. In medical, Officer Bora and her staff braced themselves while maintaining their grip on the injured crew members they were treating. The battlecruiser broke apart, pieces of it spinning away into space. The eternal horizon emerged from the collision scarred but intact, her armor blackened and dented but unbreached. The remaining Draknor ships stared in shock at what had just happened. Impossible, the second-in-command whispered. They destroyed our flagship with a ramming attack. What kind of madness is this? But Daeho wasn't finished. All batteries fire at will. Target the ships moving toward the transports. Don't let a single one get through. The carrier's weapons came alive. Railguns fired solid slugs that punched through shields and armor. Missile pods launched their payloads in waves. Energy weapons, the few the carrier possessed, added their fire to the barrage. The eternal horizon became a storm of destruction, and the 3 Draknor ships heading for the transports found themselves caught in a crossfire they couldn't escape. The human fighters rejoined the battle, their pilots energized by their carrier's audacious maneuver. Minji led her squadron in a diving attack that crippled a Draknor cruiser's engines. J1's group focused their fire on another ship's weapons systems, methodically destroying each gun emplacement. The coalition cruisers, inspired by the humans' ferocity, pressed their own attack. They had been retreating, accepting defeat, but now they fought with renewed determination. Their crews had seen what was possible when you refused to give up. On the eternal horizon, Jinho intercepted an enemy transmission. "Captain, the Draknor are arguing among themselves. Some of them want to retreat. Keep the pressure on them," Daeho ordered. "Don't give them time to reorganize. Hana, coordinate with the coalition ships. I want a focused assault on their command vessel." The battle became a brutal close-quarters fight. The Draknor had superiority in weapons technology, but the humans had something more important: adaptability. Every time the Draknor tried a new tactic, the human pilots found a counter. When the enemy deployed electronic warfare, the eternal horizon switched to analog systems that were immune to interference. When they fired energy weapons, the carrier's thick armor absorbed the hits. When they tried to outmaneuver, the human fighters' biological pilots simply outthought their predictable battle computers. In engineering, Sungmin was performing miracles. "Reroute power from the damaged sections," he shouted to his teams. "Get those manufacturing bays online. We need more ammunition." That was another feature the aliens had dismissed: the carrier's onboard manufacturing capabilities. While coalition ships had to return to base to rearm, the Eternal Horizon could produce missiles, ammunition, and spare parts during battle. The fighter bays hummed with activity as damaged craft were repaired and rearmed in minutes. The Draknor commander of the remaining forces made a desperate decision. "Charge the superweapon. We will destroy the carrier and everything around it, even if it means sacrificing our own ships." Their command cruiser's main gun began to glow with building energy. It was a weapon designed to crack planets, and at this range, nothing could survive it. The tactical display showed the power level rising, and the humans had perhaps 30 seconds before it fired. "They're charging a planet killer," Hana said, her voice tight. "We need to move now." But Daeho saw something else. "No, we attack. All ships, concentrate fire on that cruiser's main gun. Fighters, hit it with everything you have." "Captain, that's suicide," Yuna protested. "If that weapon fires at this range, it won't fire," Daeho interrupted. "Because we're going to destroy it first. Trust me." Every human ship and fighter turned toward the Draknor cruiser. They poured fire into it with desperate intensity. Railgun slugs hammered the charging weapon. Missiles detonated against its mounting. Fighter cannons stitched lines of destruction across its surface. The coalition ships added their own weapons to the assault. The Draknor superweapon's energy buildup became unstable. The commander watched in horror as his own weapon began to overload. "Shut it down. Shut it down now." But it was too late. The weapon exploded and the blast tore through the Draknor cruiser from the inside. The ship broke apart in a massive fireball that lit up the entire battlefield. The remaining Draknor vessels immediately turned and fled, their formation broken, their will shattered. The Eternal Horizon dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Corvin sector, and what Captain Daeho saw made his blood run cold. The tactical display showed a nightmare scenario. 7 Draknor warships were advancing on the colony world, their weapons tearing through the scattered remains of a coalition defense fleet. Debris floated everywhere, pieces of destroyed ships tumbling through space. Emergency beacons blinked desperately from escape pods. "Get me a damage assessment of the coalition forces," Daeho ordered. Lieutenant Yuna worked her console quickly. 2 coalition cruisers still operational but heavily damaged. 4 destroyers completely destroyed. The remaining ships are retreating toward the planet, trying to buy time for the evacuation transports. Commander Hana brought up a close view of the colony world. 3 million civilians on the surface. The transports can only carry about 500,000. The rest are trapped. Daeho studied the enemy formation. The Draknor ships were massive, their hulls covered in weapons that pulsed with an eerie blue light. They moved with the confidence of predators who knew their prey was helpless. The largest vessel, a battlecruiser twice the size of the Eternal Horizon, was positioning itself for a bombardment of the planet's surface. Communications. "Hail the Draknor flagship," Deho said. "Sir?" Hana looked surprised. "You want to talk to them?" "I want to get their attention." "Open a channel." A moment later, a face appeared on the main screen. The Draknor commander was reptilian in appearance, with scales that shifted between green and black. His eyes were cold and calculating, and when he saw Deho, something like amusement crossed his features. "A human vessel," the Draknor said, his voice a low hiss that the translator rendered into flat, emotionless words. "We were told your kind possessed primitive technology. I see the reports were accurate. That ship appears to be held together with metal plates and desperation. This is Captain Deho of the Earth vessel Eternal Horizon. You are in violation of Coalition space. Withdraw your forces immediately or we will engage." The Draknor commander actually laughed. It was a harsh barking sound. "You will engage? You and your single carrier? Human. We have destroyed 3 Coalition fleets. Your primitive vessel will be debris within minutes. But I am curious. Why would your species come here to die for aliens who rejected you? We monitored your meeting with the Velkrin. They mocked you. That's between us and them," Deho said calmly. "This is your last warning. Withdraw or be destroyed." The Draknor's amusement vanished, replaced by cold anger. "So be it. When we finish with the Coalition, we will visit your Earth and show you what happens to primitives who challenge the Draknor sovereignty." The transmission cut. Deho turned to his crew. "Battle stations. Launch all fighters. Hana, coordinate with the escort vessels. I want a defensive screen between us and that battle cruiser." Alarms blared throughout the carrier. In the fighter bays, pilot J1 was already strapped into his cockpit, his hands moving through pre-flight checks with practiced ease. Around him, hundreds of other pilots were doing the same. Fighter pilot Minji, one of the squadron's best aces, gave him a thumbs up from her own craft. "All fighters, this is flight leader J1, he said over the squadron channel. "We're facing heavy opposition. 7 capital ships, all of them larger and better armed than anything we've trained against. But remember your training. Stay in formation, watch each other's backs, and don't try to be a hero. We do this together or we don't do it at all." The bay doors opened and space yawned before them. One by one, the fighters launched, streaming out of the Eternal Horizon like angry hornets. The Draknor had never seen anything like it. Their carriers could launch perhaps 30 or 40 drones at a time. The human carrier was deploying over 200 fighters in less than 3 minutes. "What is this?" the Draknor commander demanded, watching his tactical display fill with red dots. "How can one vessel carry so many craft?" His second-in-command checked their sensors. "They appear to be manned fighters, Commander. Biological pilots in each one. Impossible. The inefficiency would be staggering. The life support requirements alone." The commander's eyes narrowed. "No matter. Target the fighters with our point defense systems. Sweep them from space." But the human fighters weren't following any pattern the Draknor recognized. Instead of forming up in neat formations, they scattered, their movements erratic and unpredictable. Some dove toward the Draknor ships at steep angles. Others broke away in tight spirals. A few simply seemed to drift, their engines barely firing. The Draknor point defense systems opened fire, filling space with energy bolts. But the human fighters were already somewhere else, dancing between the shots with impossible agility. Minji rolled her fighter sideways, letting a blast pass within meters of her canopy, then fired her missiles at a Draknor destroyer. The missiles struck true, their warheads detonating against the enemy's shields. "Shields holding," the Draknor gunner reported. "The primitive weapons barely scratched us, but then more missiles struck and more." The human fighters were everywhere, firing from a dozen different angles, and the Draknor shields began to strain under the constant barrage. The shields were designed to stop large, powerful shots from capital ships. They weren't meant to handle hundreds of small, fast-moving projectiles coming from every direction. Back on the Eternal Horizon, Commander Hana was coordinating the attack with cold precision. "Squadron 7, target the destroyer's port side. Squadron 3, hit them from above. Squadron 12, protect the transport ships." Deho watched the battle unfold on the tactical display. The fighters were doing exactly what they'd been trained to do: adapt, improvise, and overwhelm. The Draknor were powerful, but they were rigid, following standard tactics that assumed their enemy would fight in predictable ways. "Captain, the battle cruiser is charging its main weapon." Una reported. They're targeting us. Helm, evasive maneuvers. Engineering, divert all available power to forward armor. Weapons, prepare to return fire. The Eternal Horizon turned, her massive bulk moving with surprising speed. The chemical thrusters that the Coalition had mocked now proved their worth, providing thrust in ways that ion engines never could. The carrier accelerated hard, and when the Drachnor's energy beam fired, it struck only empty space where the Eternal Horizon had been a second before. Railguns, fire! Deho ordered. The carrier's kinetic weapons spoke. Solid projectiles accelerated to incredible speeds, and they slammed into the Drachnor battlecruiser's shields. The aliens were used to energy weapons that their shields could disperse. They weren't prepared for physical mass traveling at relativistic velocities. The shields flickered and failed in several sections. They're vulnerable, Hana said. Fighters, concentrate on the damaged sections. Jaewon heard the order and grinned. All squadrons, you heard the commander. Hit them where it hurts. The human fighters swarmed the battlecruiser like piranhas. Their missiles and cannons poured fire into the breached shields, and the Drachnor ship's armor began to buckle. Explosions rippled across its hull. Secondary detonations tore through internal compartments. The Drachnor commander watched in disbelief as his flagship took damage. This cannot be happening. They are primitives. Their technology is centuries behind ours. But it was happening. The humans fought with a ferocity and creativity that the Drachnor had never encountered. Every tactic they tried, the humans countered with something unexpected. Their fighters moved like living things, thinking and reacting in ways no drone could match. Their carrier took hits that should have crippled it but kept fighting, its redundant systems and heavy armor absorbing damage that would have destroyed any coalition vessel. All ships, focus fire on the human carrier, the Drachnor commander ordered desperately. Destroy it now. The Drachnor fleet turned their weapons on the Eternal Horizon, and the carrier's shields lit up under the assault. 6 months had passed since the Coalition's rejection, and life aboard the Eternal Horizon had returned to routine operations. Captain Deho walked through the engineering section, where Chief Engineer Sung Min was running diagnostics on the carrier's main power systems. The hum of machinery filled the massive chamber, a sound that Deho had always found oddly comforting. How are we looking? Deho asked. Sung Min looked up from his console, wiping grease from his hands. He was a short man with calloused fingers and sharp eyes that missed nothing. All systems running at peak efficiency, Captain. I've been upgrading the backup generators like you asked. If someone hits us with an electromagnetic pulse, we'll barely notice. Good. Keep up the work. Deho continued his rounds, stopping by the medical bay where Officer Bo-Ra was training her staff. The carrier's hospital could handle hundreds of casualties with equipment that could perform surgery in zero gravity if needed. Bo-Ra ran a tight operation, and her team was ready for anything. In the fighter bays, pilot Jaewon was leading his squadron through simulations. Jaewon was the best pilot on the carrier, a young man with reflexes that bordered on supernatural. He could make a fighter dance through space like it was an extension of his own body. Everything was ready. Everything was perfect, but Deho couldn't shake a feeling of unease that had settled over him in recent weeks. That feeling proved justified when the emergency call came. Deho was in his quarters, reviewing supply reports when his communicator buzzed. Commander Hana's voice came through, urgent and clipped.
Captain, you need to get to the bridge immediately.
We're receiving distress signals from Coalition space. Deho was moving before she finished speaking. He reached the bridge in less than 2 minutes, his uniform jacket still unbuttoned. The main screen showed a tactical display of Coalition territory, marked with red indicators that meant only one thing. War. Report, Deho ordered. Sliding into his command chair, Lieutenant Una brought up the communications logs. Multiple distress signals started coming in 4 hours ago. The Drachnor sovereignty has launched a full-scale invasion of Coalition space. 3 separate fleets have been destroyed in the initial attacks. Deho leaned forward, studying the display. The Drachnor were a militaristic empire that the Coalition had been in Cold War with for decades. No one had expected them to actually attack. What about the Velkrin? Morthos and his people? Their home fleet took heavy damage. They're requesting assistance from all Coalition members. Hana paused. They're also asking Earth for help. The bridge fell silent. Every officer present remembered the humiliation of 6 months ago, when the Coalition had rejected humanity as too primitive to join their ranks. Now those same aliens were begging for the help they had dismissed. Has Earth Command responded? Daeho asked. Admiral Taiwan is on the line now, Hana said, bringing up a video feed. The Admiral's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired, as if he hadn't slept in days. Captain Daeho, I assume you've seen the situation? Yes, sir. The Coalition is taking a beating. Worse than that. The Draknor have weapons that can bypass energy shields. They're tearing through Coalition ships like paper. Entire colonies are being evacuated. Taiwan rubbed his eyes. The Coalition Council has formally requested our assistance. They're offering full membership and a seat on their military command if we help them. Daeho felt his jaw tighten. Convenient timing. 6 months ago, we weren't good enough for them. Now they need us. I know how you feel, Captain. Believe me, I know. But there are billions of lives at stake. Civilian populations who had nothing to do with how we were treated. Taiwan looked directly at Daeho. I'm asking you as a fellow officer, what do you think we should do? Daeho thought about his response carefully. He thought about the arrogant aliens who had mocked his ship. He thought about Morthos's dismissive tone, the way they had laughed at human technology. Then he thought about something else. The millions of innocent beings who would die if no one helped them. We go, Daeho said finally, not because they deserve our help, but because it's the right thing to do. We're not like them. We don't leave people to die just because they insulted us. Taiwan smiled slightly. I was hoping you'd say that. You're authorized to take the Eternal Horizon and your escort vessels into Coalition space. Your mission is to provide support wherever it's needed most. Understood. We'll depart within the hour. The transmission ended. Daeho stood and addressed his bridge crew. You all heard the Admiral. We're going to war. This isn't a training exercise or a patrol mission. The Draknor are a real threat, and they've been fighting longer than humanity has been in space. But we have something they don't expect. What's that, sir? Yuna asked. They think we're primitive. They think our technology is outdated and our tactics are old-fashioned. That's going to be their first mistake. Daeho looked at each of his officers in turn. Send word to all departments. Battle stations in 30 minutes. I want every fighter ready to launch, every gun loaded, every system at maximum readiness. We're about to show the galaxy what humans can do. The bridge exploded into activity. Officers rushed to their stations, communicators buzzed with orders, and throughout the massive carrier, 8,000 crew members prepared for battle. In engineering, Sungmin checked every power coupling personally, making sure nothing would fail when they needed it most. In medical, Bora organized her supplies and briefed her surgical teams on treating alien biology. In the fighter bays, Jae-Wan and his pilots ran through final equipment checks, their faces serious but determined. The Eternal Horizon came alive. Her engines ignited, burning bright in the darkness of space. The two escort vessels, destroyers named Defiance and Resolute, took up positions on either side of the carrier. Together they formed a small but powerful fleet. As they prepared to jump to faster-than-light travel, Daeho received one more transmission. It was a data packet from Coalition intelligence, showing the Draknor's last known position. They were heading toward the Corvin sector, where 3 million civilians were trapped on a colony world. Plot a course for Corvin, Daeho ordered. Maximum speed. We're not letting those people die. The Eternal Horizon jumped and space twisted around them as they raced toward battle. In the war room, Draknor commanders were reviewing their next targets, confident in their technological superiority. They had destroyed 3 Coalition fleets without suffering a single loss. None of them were paying attention to the primitive human ship that was now heading their way. None of them thought it would matter even if they had noticed. That was going to be their second mistake. The silence after battle was almost deafening. Captain Daeho sat in his command chair, watching the tactical display as the surviving Draknor ships jumped away into faster-than-light travel. Around the Eternal Horizon, debris floated in great clouds, the remains of 7 enemy warships that had thought themselves invincible. Damage report, Daeho said quietly. His voice was hoarse from shouting orders during the battle. Commander Hana consulted her console. Hull breaches on 12 decks. Shield generators are at 20% capacity. Main armor is heavily damaged but intact. We lost 43 fighters and another 60 need significant repairs. She paused. Casualties, 72 dead, 190 wounded. Daeho closed his eyes for a moment. 72 lives lost. Each one was a person he had commanded. a crew member who had trusted him to bring them through this fight. Inform their families. Full honors for all of them. Lieutenant Yuna checked her sensors. The colony is safe, Captain. All evacuation transports are intact. The Coalition cruisers are damaged but operational. They're requesting permission to dock for repairs. Granted. Have Chief Engineer Sungmin coordinate with their crews. We'll help them however we can. Daeho stood slowly, his body aching from the hours of tension. Good work, everyone. You saved 3 million lives today. In the fighter bays, pilot Jaewon climbed out of his cockpit on shaking legs. He had flown 4 separate sorties during the battle, each one more desperate than the last. Around him, other pilots were doing the same, their faces showing exhaustion mixed with disbelief that they had survived. Minji landed her fighter beside him and popped her canopy. Did that really just happen? Did we actually beat them? We beat them, Jaewon confirmed, though he still sounded surprised. The Draknor ran. We made them run. In engineering, Sungmin surveyed the damage to his beloved systems. Pipes were burst, conduits were melted, and at least 3 major sections would need complete rebuilds. But the ship was still flying, still fighting, and that was what mattered. His teams were already at work, welding, replacing, and restoring. Medical Officer Bo-Ra worked without rest, treating the wounded with her skilled team. The carrier's hospital was full of both human and Coalition personnel, and she made no distinction between them. Every life was worth saving. Every injury was treated with the same care and attention. 2 hours after the battle ended, a Coalition shuttle requested permission to dock. Admiral Taewon was aboard, along with several Coalition leaders including High Chancellor Morthos. Daeho met them in the main hangar, still wearing his battle-stained uniform. Morthos stepped off the shuttle, and his expression was completely different from their first meeting. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something Daeho had never expected to see from the alien: humility. Captain Daeho, Morthos said, bowing deeply. It was a gesture of profound respect in Velcrin culture. On behalf of the Galactic Coalition and the 3 million lives you saved, I offer you our deepest gratitude. We were wrong about humanity. We were wrong about your technology. We were wrong about everything. Daeho nodded stiffly. Thank you, High Chancellor. Though I notice you've changed your opinion rather quickly. We were fools, another Coalition leader said, a blue-scaled female named Kira. We looked at your ship and saw only what we expected to see. We judged you based on our own standards, never considering that you might have developed solutions we had never imagined. Admiral Taewon stepped forward. The Coalition Council has voted unanimously. Earth is granted full membership with immediate effect. We're offering you a position on the Joint Military Command, Captain. Your tactics and your ship's capabilities need to be studied and integrated into our defense strategy. My tactics weren't anything special, Daeho said. I just used what we had. The carrier's armor absorbed hits because it was built to take damage. Our backup systems worked because we didn't rely on a single point of failure. Our fighters won because pilots can think and adapt in ways that drones cannot. Exactly, Morthos said. For thousands of years, we've been pursuing technological advancement in one direction. More energy, more speed, more automation. We forgot the value of resilience, redundancy, and the biological mind's creativity. Your species remembered these things, and it saved us. Over the following weeks, representatives from dozens of Coalition species came to study the eternal horizon. Engineers marveled at the redundant systems. Military analysts ran simulations of the battle over and over, trying to understand how a single carrier had defeated a superior force. Pilots wanted to learn from Jaewon and his squadrons, to understand how biological operators could outperform advanced combat computers. The carrier underwent repairs at a Coalition shipyard, and Daeho watched as alien workers welded new armor plates and restored damaged sections. Sungmin supervised everything with his characteristic perfectionism, making sure every repair met his exacting standards. One evening, Daeho stood in an observation deck watching the work when Hana joined him. She had been promoted to captain of her own vessel, a new Coalition carrier that would incorporate human design principles. It's strange, she said. 6 months ago, they thought we were primitives. Now they're copying our designs. Not copying, Daeho corrected. Learning. There's a difference. They're taking what we did well and combining it with their own knowledge. That's how progress works. Do you think it will last, this new alliance? Daeho considered the question. I think we proved something important. That there's no one right way to build a ship or fight a battle. Different species, different approaches, all valid. If we can remember that lesson, then yes, it will last. A month after the battle, Earth's government held a ceremony for the crew of the Eternal Horizon. Every crew member who had died received posthumous honors. Those who had survived were decorated for their bravery. Deho himself was promoted to admiral, though he insisted on remaining in command of his carrier. The ceremony was attended by leaders from across the coalition. Morthos gave a speech about humanity's courage and ingenuity. Kira presented Earth with advanced shield technology as a gift. Other species offered trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and joint military training programs. But the moment that meant the most to Deho came at the end, when a simple message was played from the colony they had saved. It was video footage of 3 million civilians, humans, and aliens together, all of them cheering and crying and celebrating their survival. Children held signs thanking the Eternal Horizon. Families waved at the cameras. That, Deho said quietly to his crew, is what we fought for. Not for glory or recognition, but for them. Never forget that. In the months that followed, more human carriers were built, each one incorporating lessons learned from the battle. The Draknor sovereignty, humiliated by their defeat, withdrew from coalition borders and began peace negotiations. Other hostile powers looked at what had happened in the Corvin sector and decided that attacking the coalition wasn't such a good idea anymore. The Eternal Horizon became a symbol throughout the galaxy, not just of human engineering, but of a deeper truth, that sometimes the best solution isn't the most advanced one. Sometimes strength comes from simplicity, resilience from redundancy, and victory from the courage to fight when others have given up. Years later, when Deho finally retired, he attended the commissioning of a new generation of carriers. These ships combined human and alien technology in ways that neither species could have achieved alone. They were faster than any human vessel, yet tough as any Velcrin ship. They carried both drones and piloted fighters, combining efficiency with creativity. At the ceremony, young captains from a dozen different species came to meet the legendary officer who had changed galactic warfare. They asked him for advice, for wisdom, for the secret to his success. Deho's answer was simple. Never assume you know everything. Never dismiss someone because they do things differently, and never ever underestimate the power of beings who refuse to give up. No matter how primitive you think they are. The Eternal Horizon still flew, now commanded by Captain Yuna, who had learned from the best. The old carrier had been fully repaired and upgraded, her battle scars proudly displayed on her hull as a reminder of the day humanity proved its worth to the galaxy. And somewhere in space, on a coalition patrol route, the carrier continued its mission, protecting those who couldn't protect themselves, fighting for those who couldn't fight, and showing the galaxy that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from advanced technology, but from the courage and creativity of those who refuse to accept defeat. The massive shape of the FSS Eternal Horizon hung in Earth's orbit like a steel mountain floating in the void. Captain Deho stood on the bridge watching as the alien shuttle approached his ship. After 200 years of searching the stars, humanity had finally made contact with intelligent life. The Galactic Coalition had arrived, and they wanted to see what humans had built. Deho adjusted his uniform and walked to the airlock. He had spent 30 years in Earth's Navy, rising through the ranks on destroyers and cruisers before taking command of humanity's first true supercarrier. The Eternal Horizon was his pride, a vessel that could carry 300 fighters and operate independently for 18 months. Every system had been tested, every crew member trained to perfection. The airlock opened with a hiss. 3 aliens stepped through, their forms strange and imposing. The tallest wore flowing robes that shimmered with embedded technology. His skin was gray and smooth, his eyes large and dark. This was High Chancellor Morthos of the Velcrin Empire, one of the most powerful members of the Galactic Coalition. "Welcome aboard the Eternal Horizon," Deho said, extending his hand in greeting. Morthos looked at the offered hand but did not take it. Instead, he made a gesture with his long fingers and spoke through a translation device attached to his robe. "We acknowledge your hospitality, human. Please begin the tour. The Coalition wishes to evaluate your military capabilities." Deho lowered his hand slowly. He had expected some cultural differences, but the alien's tone carried something else. Dismissal. Condescension. He pushed the feeling aside and nodded to Commander Hana, his tactical officer. She stepped forward, a datapad in her hands. "If you'll follow me, I'll show you our command center first," Hana said. Her voice was professional and calm, though Daeho could see the tension in her shoulders. As they walked through the corridors of the carrier, Daeho noticed the aliens examining everything with what seemed like barely concealed amusement. One of them, a shorter being with blue-scaled skin, actually laughed when they passed a manual control panel. "Forgive me," the scaled alien said, "but are these physical switches? We abandoned such primitive interfaces 5,000 years ago." Hana's jaw tightened, but she kept her composure. "They serve as backup systems. If our primary digital controls fail, we can still operate the ship manually." Morthos made a sound that might have been a scoff. "How inefficient! A properly designed vessel would never require such redundancy. Your technology appears to be several centuries behind Coalition standards." They entered the bridge, where Admiral Taewan was waiting. The Admiral was Earth's representative to the Coalition talks, a decorated officer who had fought in the resource wars that had finally united humanity. He greeted the aliens with a diplomatic smile. "Welcome. I hope you're finding our carrier impressive," Taewan said. "Impressive is not the word I would choose," Morthos replied. He gestured at the various stations around the bridge. "Your crew operates their systems manually. Your weapons appear to be kinetic projectiles and simple missiles. Your propulsion uses chemical reactions for maneuvering. Tell me, do you even possess energy shields?" Daeho felt his temper rising but kept his voice level. "We have shield technology, yes. But our armor plating provides additional protection that shields alone cannot match." The third alien, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. Her voice was musical but cold. "Armor plating. How quaint. The mass alone must make your vessel incredibly slow and inefficient. In the Coalition, we learned long ago that speed and energy manipulation are far superior to crude physical barriers." Lieutenant Yuna, who managed the flight operations deck, had joined them on the bridge. She looked like she wanted to say something, but Daeho caught her eye and shook his head slightly. They had to endure this inspection if Earth wanted any chance at joining the Coalition. The tour continued through the fighter bays, where rows of human combat craft stood ready for launch. The aliens seemed particularly amused by these single-pilot fighters, Morthos observed, controlled by biological beings who require life support, food, rest. "Why not use automated drones? The loss of life seems unnecessary." "Our pilots are our greatest asset," Daeho said firmly. "They can adapt, improvise, and make decisions that no computer can match. Every one of them is trained for years. They're not just operators. They're warriors." "Sentiment over efficiency," the blue-scaled alien said. "This is why primitive species struggle to advance. You cling to outdated concepts like honor and individual skill, when calculation and precision are what win battles." The tour ended in one of the carrier's conference rooms. Taiwan tried to salvage the situation with discussions about Earth's resources and strategic position, but the aliens had clearly already made their decision. Morthos stood, his robes flowing around him. "The Galactic Coalition appreciates your interest in joining our alliance. However, after this inspection, we must decline your application. Your technology is too primitive, your methods too inefficient. Perhaps in a few hundred years, when you have advanced beyond these crude systems, we can reconsider." "We understand," Taewan said, though his voice was tight with suppressed anger. "Thank you for your time." As the aliens departed, the bridge crew remained silent. Daeho watched their shuttle pull away from the eternal horizon, heading back to their own ships that gleamed with advanced technology in the distant orbit. "They're fools," Hana said quietly. "They looked at our ship and saw only what they wanted to see." "They saw a carrier using chemical propulsion and projectile weapons," Yuna added. "They didn't bother to ask why we designed it this way." Daeho nodded slowly. The eternal horizon had been built with hard lessons from human history. Every backup system, every redundancy, every piece of so-called primitive technology had a purpose. The carrier could take damage that would cripple any purely digital ship. It could operate in environments where energy weapons became useless. Its fighters could think and adapt in ways that no drone could match. But the aliens hadn't cared to learn any of that. They had made their judgment based on appearance alone. "Log everything from this meeting," Daeho ordered. "Every comment, every measurement they took. If we ever encounter the Coalition again, I want a full record. As the alien ships departed Earth system, Deho returned to his captain's chair. He looked out at the stars, wondering what else was out there in the galaxy. The Coalition had rejected humanity, but that didn't mean contact was over. Somewhere in the darkness, other eyes were watching. The Draknor sovereignty had observed the entire exchange, and they were very interested in what they had seen.